Hello, sir. How are you?
Good, you?
Hanging in there. I it's funny. It's funny. I'm wearing the shirt. I have Bruce Springsteen to thank for knowing who Pete Seeger is because of his album.
Yep.
And, 1 degree closer to that because you've interviewed him. So we're getting
I
there.
think
But
I think Bruce is much more in many ways the descendant of Pete Seeger than Dylan ever was. I think Bruce and Pete share an enormous amount of DNA as artists and and advocates for people. You know what I mean? It's fitting, I think, that he did the Seeger Sessions record.
oh yeah, which is funny because also Woody Guthrie is in the film and is such a influence on both. There is this weird combined tissue that when you like music from a certain era, especially when you're not from that era, like I'm 37, it's not my time, but when you start to look back and you realize there was all this combined tissue and this mingling and influencing that you just don't think about at the time because they're contemporaries. And I love that the movie does such a good job of people are just milling about interacting with each other. There's never this thought of this is a momentous moment we're having. No,
Mm.
this is just we're making music. Like Pete's such a great example of just want to make music. I want to have the purity of the music. Like there's such a different movie where his sort of pleading the Bob is he'd be the antagonist, and he's not in the film. You don't
Mm.
play that. It is so pure, and
Well,
you're
also, I think that there's different types of integrity can coexist. Like Dylan, what we admire Dylan for is his integrity to his artistic line.
totally.
It's like, and actually, he used. I mean, look at the Scorsese film. He says like, I don't want to engage in anything as petty as politics. You know what I mean? He was never that guy. And Pete Seeger was. We revere him for totally different reasons. A great musician and everything, but integrity of his total commitment to the cause of humanity. You know what I mean? And music as an instrument of cause. They coexist. They're not always in the same lane, but they coexist. And I love Jim Mangold's approach to looking at that without judgment, and not really actually needing to call it one way or the other. I really really drew me into this his take on it.
Oh, yeah, and if you were dropped into the movie, right, in a world where we used to watch things on like television, right, you would discover a movie a couple years from now on cable. If you just watched a random scene, I don't think you would know who the protagonist necessarily is because they are given this equal weight. You're given an equal platform. Your points of view are given an equal
Hmm.
like sense of importance, sense of integrity. It is very rare. Like I don't know of another filmmaker who would have necessarily made this movie in that way.
Maybe not. I told Jim that I mean, I'm older than you, but Do the Right Thing was an enormously
Sure.
seminal film for me and Phil Hoffman and Mark Ruffalo and like a lot of us who came up in that time. I remember that movie. We were all in college. That was a hand grenade. That movie, right? But it finishes with a quote of Martin Luther King and a quote of Malcolm X, and they're diametrically opposed. And Spike just leaves it in your lap. Like he. And I do think I think many of the very best filmmakers leave you with questions, not answers, and I think that Jim is in that category for me. I think he he wants to leave you marinating on what your own individual feeling about these people and these choices and all of it were.
Oh yeah, no, the worst response you can get to a movie is no response, right? Like you've made stuff, your stuff. You would much rather someone not like the work than go, okay, what's for dinner? Like that's the worst review you can get is I'm not even considering the work. It was just something to do for
Yeah.
90. You'd much rather like any response that is generating discussion is worthwhile. And the fact that there has been, and the movie's only been screening for a couple weeks, that already we've been talking about it, and it's sort of renewed this interest in
Mhm.
not just the artist, right? That any movie about Bob Dylan will do it, but the idea of the time and the people and how it would have to be that place in that time with those people. There's such a worldwide aspect to it that I think is makes it a James Mangold movie, makes it something that you would want to be in. You know as well as anyone. Like you get sent things you don't want to do. Like the fact that you choose to do something says something about what questions it's asking. Because I think you are one of the more curious actors and out there. Like I think you're always asking a question and always want the audience to ask you a question at the end of it. I think that's Motherless Brooklyn. That's this. That's what I think doing interesting work entails.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And you're right. It's like I remember I actually loved that when Fincher went to put together the box set of Fight Club, he had them print all the negative reviews in the sleeve,
Oh yeah.
um, which was not just. I honestly think it wasn't about thumbing the nose. It was sort of saying, like like this really got a rise out of some people. Some people felt indicted by it, so um, we were very interested in that. I mean, that was interesting, and it is interesting when you when you provoke dissent.
Yeah, but why you're pushing a button is as interesting as the button being pushed. Because if you're just being a dick, right, that's not fun. That's just being a dick. But if you're doing something that gets people annoyed at you and you're like, well, there's as many people who are loving what we're doing. Why is it bothering you? Like, yeah, let's explore
Mm,
that more. Like
yeah.
that's why I think the right bad review is always more interesting to someone than a rave, right? A rave is okay, that's what we were hoping for. But if someone hits on something that you go, I never thought about that, you suddenly want to lean in and go, well, why did you think that? What made that happen? And in a way, that is like very Bob Dylan. Bob
Mm,
Dylan is that like, I want to poke you and see what the response is. I don't really
yeah.
care that you're having a response. I want you to have a
Yeah.
response.
Yeah. And
And
if you like it too much, I'm departing and going somewhere else.
I'm going to poke you in a different way because that's not what I want.
Yeah,
Like you need
exactly.
to write them.
Exactly.
Like it's this purity of art that I think anyone who does something creative kind of has in them. But you also have that other side that's like, well, I want to play nice with others, and it's
Mm,
nice to have fun and be liked. And I think as an actor, you always have sort of those two things marinating with each other. And the fact that Bob was so pure and no, I'm this way,
yeah.
and I may
I,
know
I,
why.
I think I look at Scorsese's documentary about him every couple years because I do
Sure.
think it's very rare that someone as young as he was at that time has the discipline and even the awareness that too much love is gonna be corrosive to where he wants to go. And you know, to see a 21-year-old, 22-year-old saying, "I'm not going to tell you what it means. You tell me what it means." That is not many people that young resist the ego candy that was being thrown at him.
Oh, yeah, because it's fun. It's what it's the allure. But yeah, to be able to go, that's less important to me than exploring it in a way that I'm comfortable with and I have to live with myself is it's a thing that like most artists don't understand until they're 20 years down the line, if not
Mm,
later. I mean,
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
the whole aspect of that is a middle-aged third act. Like that's when you start looking back and going, well, why was I the way I was? The fact that you can do it as you're doing it is insane.
Yeah, he was very very unique in that sense.
Oh yeah, and it makes it why we want to watch a movie about it and why we want to watch the people in his world because I think watching people watch him is shockingly interesting here. And I think the way Pete especially watches him, this like pride and also concern, and the concern is partly about the music, but also about this person who's his friend, who he
Mm.
worries about. Is I think you play it in such a kind-hearted way, but also like practical. It's sort of in a way playing on everything you've ever done. In a way, I imagine it was incredibly satisfying when you feel like you're expressing in that manner.
Um, it the satisfactions of it aren't kind of an external looking at yourself. It just the satisfactions of it I think are just that the music was enormous fun to try to work on, but also just the as Jim as Jim was very articulate about, like what's juicy is the idea of paradoxical feelings, that you love and support someone and also sort of hope they'll do what you want them to do. You know what I mean? Like these things coexist when competing ideas coexist in people. Um, I think the Dylan in this film, the amount of love and respect that you feel coming through him toward Pete till the very end, even as he makes a choice to do what he needs to do, is that, I mean, it is a great, great rendering, I think, of the truth of people's complexity. I really love what Timothy wove into it.
As do I, and I love what you did, and I love the film, and I'm thrilled we got to do this. And yeah, no, anything you're in, I'm always
Oh,
curious about in the right way. So that's a huge compliment
Thank you. I
from.
appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for doing this.
Yeah,
My
great
pleasure.
shirt. You got the shirt of the day,
Yeah, so far someone will beat
without a
it.
doubt. No, no one's gonna
Joey,
beat that shirt.